Welcome to Politics Done Right. I am your host, Egberto Willies. This is a progressive program that will take the mystery out of politics. This is the program that will encourage you to make sure government becomes we the people. Whether you are liberal, progressive, conservative, or otherwise, you get to air your point of view. We are an independent media outlet that, unlike mainstream media beholden to corporations, we only owe allegiance to you. Remember, you can also send me a tweet at EGBERTOWILLIES. That is at Egberto Willies. Let us engage. It is Politics Done Right. Welcome to one more edition of Politics Done Right on KPFT 90.1 FM Houston, your community radio station. We have a great program for you today. What's the title of the show today? Trump crony delays COVID checks. Progressives take Democratic Party in Nevada, and state rep discusses education bill and Jim Crow. A Trump appointee sabotaged the stimulus checks heading to Social Security recipients. Social Security Works Executive Director Alex Lawson explains. Progressive activist Sandra Cisneros Peeters talks about the progressive takeover of the Nevada Democratic Party. It sparked the exodus of staff consultants. What they just didn't expect is that we got better and better at organizing and out-organizing them, said one person. State Representative Jon Rosenthal from House District 135 visited with us to discuss the happenings in the Texas Legislature, including his education bills and Jim Crow 2.0. People, before we get started, please remember to keep your community radio station, KPFT, in your minds. Talk about it. Tell your friends to tune in to 90.1 FM Houston or listen at kpft.org. Likewise, keep our 100,000 watt station that covers the entire Southeast Texas on air by donating what you can afford at our website, kpft.org. Lastly, remember, you can get Politics Done Right Mondays through Fridays on Facebook Live. Where can you do that? At facebook.com/Politics Done Right. That's where you get our live show on every day at 3 p.m. Facebook.com/Politics Done Right. Or you can also get it live at 3 p.m. Monday through Fridays at politicsdoneright.com/YouTube. politicsdoneright.com/YouTube. Please don't forget to follow me on Twitter for updates. My handle is at Egberto Willies. At Egberto Willies. Spell EGBERTOWILLIES. So folks, without further ado, let's get busy. We got a great show for you. Today we have a very special guest for a very important subject. We have Alex Lawson from Executive Director of Social Security Works. Alex, how are you doing today?
Well, thank you for having me again.
Well, look, here's the issue. I like you, but having you on usually doesn't come because I like you. It comes because there is something serious happening in the country, and you being the executive director of Social Security Works mean that it's something that you have to be out there fighting for. There's this new article that came out at Common Dreams that quoted you, and when I read the article, I said, you know what, I got to get in touch with Alex because this isn't right. Why don't you tell us a little bit about why is it that Social Security recipients right now, and tell me if I have it right, they're having their $1,400 checks delayed.
Yep. I mean, that's it. And I think important to note, the last checks, the $600 checks, they were automatically deposited into people's accounts. And the debit cards went out to people who didn't have the direct deposit. So the Social Security Administration knows exactly what they're supposed to do. They know exactly what the intent of Congress when they passed this money was. Congress said people on Social Security, people on SSI, people on the railroad retirement pension plan, they should get their checks But Social Security Administration, which is Andrew Saul and David Black at the top of it, who are two Trump appointees, they're just total Trumpists. They drag their feet because what they want to do is they want people to get angry at Biden for not getting their checks. And you know what? People are angry because they were counting on the $1,400 being deposited into their accounts, just like the $600 was. People watched on the television when they saw that the bill had passed. They made financial decisions based on their understanding of what was going to happen, which was that they were going to get the $1,400. And then they didn't. So we have a lot of people in this country facing hardship. They need to pay their rent. They're behind on one of their bills. And it is all because of these two Trumpists at the top of the Social Security Administration, again, Andrew Saul and David Black, that Biden has not fired. And it's time. Biden needs to act now. He needs to replace these guys. They're sabotaging his agenda.
Now, tell me a little bit about these guys. What do you know about them?
A lot. You'll have to reel me in. But I mean, really, the way it is David Black should be fired months ago. I mean, like this guy is absolutely the architect of dismantling Social Security from the inside. And there's nothing protecting him at all. There is not even a hint or a whiff of any protection. He absolutely serves at the pleasure of the president, who can fire him right now, immediately. So David Black is the architect. He's actually the guy, the ideologue, who sees Social Security and the success of this program and the fact that people love this program. They love it. And he sees that as a negative thing because he doesn't want anything that works. He doesn't want government that works. He wants to break anything that works. Social Security works. The post office works. Public education works. That's why they want to destroy all of them, right? It's the old right-wing scam. Kneecap the mailman, then complain that the mail is late, and then you just happen to have a cousin who's in the private mail delivery business, right? I mean, that's what it's all about. So David Black is the architect. He's the big brain. Andrew Saul is just a dilettante. He just feels entitled to this position. He's a rich guy. He's always been rich. He gives money to Republicans, and in return, he wants some office that he can wear on his blazer because that's what makes him feel important. But he doesn't care or care to know about anything to do with the system. This is a guy who Social Security is massive, trillions of dollars, 70,000 people working in the administration. This guy didn't even move to Maryland when he became commissioner. He just stayed in New York. He was an absentee boss. He didn't even check in to his email system for 6 months after he took the job. And the only reason that he did was because someone told him that was FOIA-able and it would make him look bad that he never actually checked into the system and used it to do his job. This is a guy who just sits in a chair, and it's not about the check for him, right? Like, this is a rich guy. It's about this sort of entitled, do you know who I am, sir, kind of way. And just the final little note on that, do you know who I am? This is also a guy who, this is totally, you can check this. It's a great story. He's riding his bike in New York, and a cop is like, hey, you can't ride your bike wherever he was. This isn't about whether or not the ticket, but what Andrew Saul did is he was like, do you know who I am? I am the public safety commissioner of New York and have a license to ride my, and he lied that he impersonated. So he pulled out a piece of paper and impersonated a public official in order to try to get out of a bike ticket, which he didn't do. He didn't get out of a bike ticket. I feel like that story really encapsulates who Andrew Saul is. He is the do you know who I am guy. And he also can be fired by President Biden. It's a little bit of a different process, but he can absolutely be fired by President Biden, especially.
All these guys that are protected by the GSA or these other structures, even if they're not fired, they can be placed on hiatus and you put the person you want in there. Is that right?
And actually, it's even more because of a Supreme Court ruling under Trump, when Trump was trying to get rid of the head of the Consumer Financial Protection Board. The Supreme Court has ruled specifically that these independent agencies, the heads of them still serve at the pleasure of the president. You know, the president is the top of the executive arm. This is part of the executive arm. So he can fire them. It has to be a little bit more. There's just a little bit more. But, you know, he has cause. This is absolute delaying 30 million people's Social Security. I mean, relief checks, people, seniors and people with disabilities, the people who have been hammered by this pandemic. He delayed 30 million people's checks in order to sabotage Joe Biden. If that's not cause, I don't know what is.
Well, Alex, one of the things that we, you know, I always talk about, progressives are generally not very good marketers. It seemed to me like this is something that can be used against not only Trump per se, but the Republican methodology in general, because again, look at what leaving one of Trump's people in office does to you, and then you get rid to hell of all of them, don't you think?
Yeah, we have more than one example, right? I mean, we're talking about Social Security right here, but look at the Postal Service.
Oh God,
the joy,
yes.
Joy is. I mean, like, he just openly said, "I'm going to make America's post service terrible, and I'm going to charge you more." Oh, by the way, I literally have a conflict of interest, a monetary conflict of interest with a firm that would benefit from destroying the Postal Service. Like, he just out in the open. You have DeJoy, you have Saul and Black, and then you have the Border Patrol, who are concocting an entire narrative to advance their agenda, their white nationalist agenda, their anti-immigrant agenda. And they're trying to corner Biden on it. And the media, you know, not independent media like you, but man, the media, they're just like patsies for this, just hook, line, and sinker every time. So we don't need to wonder about this, right? Three's a trend. We know what happens when you leave these Trumpists in your flank. They're going to flank you. They're going to stab you right in the back. They're going to do everything they can to sabotage the Biden administration, the American people, in order to win an election in 2022 and 2024 so they can take power again. And it's the height of naivete to think anything else is going on here.
I always thought that one of the reasons they are generally successful about that is that we fight back so poorly. Just like how we've allowed the media to create a narrative. Biden today, I think, did a fairly good job in dispelling the narrative in his press conference. This press conference was orders of magnitudes better than I expected it to be. I'll be honest with you.
I mean, my only criticism was that the media were just, you know, classic. They just did not get there. It's just all puffery. Biden
because they
did a good job.
They didn't even talk. They didn't ask one question about COVID.
What about the vaccine rollout? What
Not
about
one.
They didn't. What? How do you look around and you're like, you know what? I don't think people are into it. But actually, I have an answer. I know how. It's because, you know, these are people who work in an institution that's first on the list, right? Like first head of the line. And I want, you know, people to get the vaccine. So I'm happy that journalists get the vaccines. But I'm talking about the publishers, the editors, the whole institution are people who aren't wondering when they're going to get the vaccine because they already got the vaccine. Right. That's the problem with the corporate media is disconnected from the reality of people. Right? And it just ties into what happened with Social Security. This is Andrew Saul and David Black saying that 30 million Americans who have borne the brunt of the pandemic are at the back of the line for you. Right after everybody else, maybe we'll take care of you and get those payments out to you. And it's just sick. It's just sick. And, you know, without truth tellers and independent media like you, there's no alternative. Right. Like, so I went to my favorite place of saying the corporate media are terrible because they are. You started with Biden did a good job at the presser, which I actually agree with, especially the bar that was set for him by Fox News.
That's what I mean. Yes.
His head was going to fall off, right?
I know. But what was interesting is that the good thing about it is that the preamble to the event, he talked about the vaccine, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So that I think is important. But I think also it's important for what I call the progressive media to do its job. In other words, not to buy into the hype. On my show, I don't cover, I tell people about immigration. I tell people I'm not covering Cuomo. I'm not covering immigration. I'm not covering any of that because those are really smoke screens. With Cuomo, not so. That's just not my purview. But with the immigration and all those other things, that's not what we want to do. I think it is important, however, Alex, that we get this message out. I didn't learn about this. I don't know why not. I didn't learn about it until I read your quote inside of Common Dreams. And it was immediately, to me, something that needed to be exploded right away. I don't think I heard it. I listened to MSNBC and CNN all day today, and I don't think I heard it once.
No, and that's what I mean. I mean, that's the problem with the corporate media. And there has been some real champions on this. Senator Sherrod Brown from Ohio, right, who's the chair of the Social Security Committee in the Senate, and then Representative Lawson, the chair in the House. Bill Pascrell, another House member who's great. Just been amazing on this. And they've been attack dogs. And if it wasn't for them, these guys, people still wouldn't be getting their checks. There'd be no plan to get their checks.
Have they started sending them out?
No, they went on the attack. Yes, I loved watching this hardball because these members of Congress on the House side, they went to Andrew Saul and they said, you have 24 hours. So let me actually say, IRS asked the Social Security Administration for a file that they needed this data in order to get the stuff out. They asked for that weeks ago, and Social Security Administration had not given them the file. That's the delay. That's how they created this delay. And the members in the House said 24 hours. You have 24 hours, and then we're going to bring you in front of, we're going to subpoena you. And he did it. He was forced to buy these.
They have the data now.
They gave him the data. That means we're looking at as soon. I don't want to get people's hopes up, but as soon as early next week, is where we could be seeing these checks finally getting into people's hands. And again, I know you know this, but I just want to reiterate: it's Social Security. We're talking about people who are getting by on so little money, $15,000 a year. And we're also talking about people on SSI who are some of the poorest people in this country. And that's who got put at the back of the line. People with disabilities, seniors, and poor people. A lot of homeless people are on SSI. I mean, this is vulnerable communities. And that's who Andrew Saul attacked. And that's who he hurt with this. And that's why Biden cannot allow him to serve even one more day in this position, because he's not serving.
I agree with you wholeheartedly. Well, look, thank you for all that work that you're doing, my friend. Now, please, what would you like to tell our audience that I simply didn't ask you?
Just plug in on this fight. Raise the temperature on this. You can go to socialsecurityworks.org. You can find out all the resources there, and be a happy warrior, because I will say we're fighting about getting this cash into people's pockets, and that's important. And that's because we won on a $1.9 trillion plan for the American people. And that was with Democrats just driving that through against all of the Republican opposition. And we have another big fight coming up, infrastructure, drug prices, and the reconciliation. Say that again.
S1.
Huge fight. So yes. I feel like two giant fights coming up. Democracy, the future of democracy with S1, HR1, and also the reconciliation bill, which is an investment in the American people. We have to fight these battles, and we have to keep on driving forward to achieve our vision.
We got to go. I want to say one thing, and I don't know if you're saying before I go here, and that is, right now, a lot of Democrats are hurting or not hurting, but are kind of haggling on Joe Manchin. I just want to tell all our audience, look, right now, we don't want a Jeffers occurrence again. I don't know if you remember Jeffers back in the early days, jumped from the Republican Party to the Democratic Party. We want to kind of play this stuff intelligently. And with guys like you and others, please ensure that people play this card until 2022 when we win 2 more senators. Executive Director of Social Security Works, Alex Lawson, thank you once again for being here on Politics Done Right.
Thanks so much.
Before we get to Sandra Cisneros Peeters on the progressive takeover of the Nevada Democratic Party, I just want to talk a little bit about something that hits close to home. We have this trial that's going on in Minneapolis, Minnesota right now, where Chauvin assassinated George Floyd with putting his knee on his neck. I think it is important for all of us to be engaged on this. I think it's important for all of us to look at those pictures. I think it's important for us to look at the video. It's important for us to see what real hate looks like. You know, there are a whole lot of times that people hear people of color complaining about the police, and it's like, there you go again. No, the police is not this, is not that. It is something like many folks want to believe. I know to many, it's not, people are not trying to be definitely malicious. They just can't believe that that which upholds their law can have such evil within. Look at the eyes of Chauvin as he murdered George Floyd. There are several officers in the departments, not all, but quite a bit, that is the animosity, that is the hate, that is a virulence with which they feel towards people of color. It is there. It is there, and it's important for all Americans to understand that this is real, and many of us suffer these indignities all the way up to death. We have a great person to speak with today, Sandra Cisneros Peeters. She is in Nevada, and something special happened in Nevada. You know, before you start, we've been talking about this, Sandra, that if you want to make a change, you have to make a change from within, and like a virus expands. So Sandra Cisneros Peeters out of Nevada. First of all, tell me a little bit about yourself.
Okay, so let me just clarify. I'm actually in Houston, and I went to work in Nevada for the Bernie campaign in 2020. Okay. Yeah.
Corrected.
Yeah.
So tell me what happened in Nevada.
So, I mean, we all saw the videos in 2016, right, of the aggression that the party insiders had towards progressives and Bernie-crats. And so we really saw like the building, like the wins that we saw, like we just heard about, like that has been building since back then. Like DSAers have been on the ground, like building all kinds of like, you know, support of like pronged. It was beautiful to see.
Now, so I think what happened in Nevada was that we had a takeover of the entire state party system by progressives. Is that correct?
Yeah, they won there was 5 or 6 elections, and they won all of them. They swept it.
And now they're in full control of the party.
Yep. It's beautiful, right? Like, this is what we're working towards.
I mean, for a long time, we've been saying that, you know, I mean, people have been wondering whether progressives should work within the Democratic Party, outside of the Democratic Party. But since there is a structure already there, it seems like just like, let's say, the Tea Party worked hard to get their influence within the Republican Party, progressives needed to do the same thing to pass people-centric policies, don't you think?
No, I agree. I mean, I understand people's like hesitation to work within a party that we know is really antagonistic towards us, but it's there and it's not going away. So why don't we put ourselves in those positions, right? Like, that's just the way I see it.
Oh, absolutely. So, and so when you went over there, I was in Nevada as well when Bernie won. I was a Bernie. I worked in the Spanish community, in the Latin community for Bernie out there for, I don't know, for probably 3-4 days when that big push was on, and we went to that bar and watched as the returns came in, and it was like a real progressive win by a landslide in a Western state. It was a blast. Were you there for that as well, or?
Yeah. I was there. I believe I started like the beginning of February,
Right.
up until like the winds. Yeah.
Up until the wind.
And you could feel it. Like you could see all the work that was being done on the ground. Like it wasn't just, get out the vote work. Like we weren't there to just tell people, oh, you have to vote for this candidate because we know better than you. It's like, no, we're like, people were explaining like, this is, what we're fighting for and you should join us. And you felt it. Like I saw, like DSAers on the ground were like hitting the strip and like they were labor organizing. So it was amazing.
And, I think that is something for actually the party in general to learn, because if you take a look at the 81 million people who voted for Biden in this election, you don't get 81 million people when Hillary only got 67 or so. You don't get that huge increase if you didn't have all these people on the ground really saying, hey, we're going to make things happen for you this time. So please come out and vote. And the fact that you got that turn in Nevada, and like you said, I remember being there as well. It was a different scenario. People were actually not just saying, we are here for the vote. It was, we are here to organize, just like you guys have been doing for a long time.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's where the power is built. Like we are so powerful when we get together, because we're all going through like some of the same types of struggles. So it's just about, getting together and like pushing back.
And you know what? A very good job is being done. And I have, I'm a member of just about all these different progressive organizations as well, including DSA. And I must say that what I saw here, even here in Houston, I saw DSA all over every neighborhood, whether it be Latino neighborhood, whether it, like I said, they were in the barrios, they were in the ghettos, they were in the Appalachian parts of Houston as well. So you know what I'm talking about. I mean, so it was great seeing performance. And I think Nevada should give every part of every party a pause, because that is what we call people power, not establishment power, but people power. Give me your final thoughts.
That was just really good news. Waking up to read that, I wasn't surprised, because we know like all the work that they've been doing. So it's not a surprise that they're seeing these ones, but it was still, it makes your heart like grow bigger.
Well, let me tell you, folks, we're speaking to Sandra Cisneros Peeters, a progressive activist here in Houston who played a big part of the Bernie Sanders win in Nevada. And I needed to speak to somebody who was in Nevada when this all started. And now the progressives are in charge of the party in Nevada. Thank you so kindly for having been on Politics Done Right.
Thank you.
As you guys know, there's a whole lot of stuff happening throughout state legislatures in this country. Texas is no different. And today I am honored to be with the one and only Representative Jon Rosenthal from District 135 in the Houston area, but this covers entire Texas. Representative Jon, how are you doing today?
I'm good. Thank you for having me. Well, it's been too long since we've sat together.
Yeah, but you know what? There's so much that has happened since this is your second term that you've been reelected, which gives you a certain degree of permanence, and people know you. People know your name. I think you won something special in your first year at the Capitol. Is that correct? Tell us a little bit about that.
That's right. In my first term, I was awarded the Freshman of the Year. I was named Freshman of the Year by the Legislative Study Group, which is actually the second largest caucus in the Texas House, second only to the Republican House caucus. And so that's a great honor for me to be named. Legislative Study Group is a nonpartisan policy analysis group, and I was given that honor because my policy and my projection, my focus is on the people of Texas. So I don't let politics or special interests get in the way of serving the people.
Well, you know, that is one of the great things of actually having engineers in legislatures, because engineers believe in engineering things, making sure things work. I'm kind of partial to that. You're a mechanical engineer. I'm a mechanical engineer. So, I mean, I'm really partial to those kinds of things. But anyhow, but look, there's a whole lot of stuff happening around the country. You saw what happened in Georgia, where they passed that bill that, I mean, even if you're in a long line for 11 hours, if somebody gives you a bottle of water, you are committing a crime. In the Texas Legislature, what's going on? Tell us a little bit about the bills that you want submitted. Tell us a little bit about the bills that you want to get the hell out of there. And tell us a little bit about what you need us as the community to do, meaning the entire Texas community to do, to make sure bad bills don't get through.
So how much time do we have?
You start telling me, and we'll go from there.
Okay, so we have a number of really hot topics in the legislature. So I'll start with sort of a global view. And what's going on right now is there were already major initiatives to address recovery from the pandemic, major initiatives around voter suppression or voter security, depending on what your perspective on that is. You know, we've got George Floyd Act and major amendment to the Sandra Bland Act. So a lot of civil rights, criminal justice reform issues. And then to pile on top of all of this, we just had a major freeze at the beginning of our session. And there's a huge push. The governor made it an emergency item to address some of the causing factors of this freeze. Hopefully we will do that substantively, but those are the large, those are the big focus, big ticket items that I see. And there's a number of other things too. I hope I'm not leaving off something terribly important, but I came in, you know, with my specific agenda too. I wanted in a lean budget year. So one of the challenges we're facing is that we're not going to have as much money to spend this time as we did last time, because the revenues are reduced as a result of the COVID pandemic, less oil and gas sales. So we get less oil and gas severance taxes, less in-person sales. So there's less sales tax. I guess property tax probably stays the same, but you know, the number of people that default on their homes and stuff reduces that probably some. So we got a shortfall in revenue, and that makes life a little tougher, because we just fought in my first session, in the 86th legislative session, which was the last one. We fought so hard to increase spending in public education, and we had a massive increase in spending for public education, like $12 billion. And so I came in with a strong focus to try to maintain that spending, and even if possible, try to find a way to increase spending in our public schools. And it may be possible, you know, because of federal money coming in, that is going to alleviate some of these budget concerns, but probably not all.
And that is from the $1.9 trillion America Rescue Plan.
That's right.
Okay.
That's right. So I personally, we could get into all sorts of stuff. I mean, we could probably talk all day just about that, just about trying to make sure that federal money coming into the state that's earmarked to benefit public schools
before
goes to the public schools.
Before you go into the specific of those particular bills that you're talking about,
yeah,
I want to ask something that has been my pet peeve for over a decade now, and that is the Medicaid expansion to the Affordable Care Act. I mean, it was denied Texans, even though for the first 3 years it costs 0 and thereafter 10%. And it also helps the economy. Have you guys decided what you're going to do about that yet? Or are Democrats going to go in there and make a stink about some of the reasons why it is actually hurting us, not only health-wise, but economically?
Yes. And there are a number of bills that Democrats have brought to push, the executive to accept the expansion. We're also going to have an extended series of conversations on budget night to accept the Medicaid expansion, just like we did in the last session. Democrats have pushed to accept this expansion since it was available. And now we're one of something like only 12 states to not have accepted
Exactly.
it.
Even most red states now have it. Yes.
Because they figured out they're leaving money on the table, and it's our money.
Yes, it's
We've
amazing.
already. It's $10 billion. Is it $10 billion a biennium? I think so.
Yes,
it's $5 billion a year, and so over the course of the last 10 years, we've left $50 billion on the table, and
unrecoverable.
That's right. And
John, I want to ask you.
We're hoping that puts pressure.
Sorry to interrupt you, Representative.
No, it's fine.
But I want to ask you this because my contention is for a group that claims to be fiscally responsible. Why haven't we more effectively made the case that we've left $50 billion that could have gone to educate our kids, $50 billion that could have otherwise gone to do so many other things on the table? How can you elect people that do that?
It's a good question. I mean, that should be a fundamental talking point for us. And I think it has been. It was part of my platform to get elected, and also my platform. Yes, and my platform to get reelected. I mean, this was a much tougher election. Freshmen are seen as a freshman flipping a seat from one party to the other is seen as most vulnerable after that first term.
Right.
And so spending in my race was in the millions of dollars. I mean, it was a very tight race. So I'm grateful to the people of the district for returning me to the House. But that was my message, and I think that's part of how Democrats not just succeed. I mean, it's good to succeed, and certainly there's an amount of political ambition around this. But the point has got to be what's good for the people, what's good for the state, and we're beyond the tipping point. Texas is simply the worst in the country when it comes to healthcare for our citizens. We are number 50 out of 50 on a number of measurements that are vital, including, maternal mortality, number of uninsured, percentage of uninsured, number of uninsured children, percentage of uninsured children in this state, higher than any other state in the union. And folks who are conservatives that maybe hold a different view, I hope that they will come around to understand that the fact that folks are uninsured raises the cost to insure all of us. It raises the cost for healthcare for everybody across the table. So accepting the money, the Medicaid expansion, will help alleviate some of those costs, especially the indigent care costs. You show up in an emergency room, you don't have insurance, they take care of you anyway, and the hospital pads all their other charges on everybody else to cover what they're going to have to cover in that. So when you bring that down, it lowers the cost for all of us. And when you lower the cost, you lower the insurance rate. So what's the possibility of it being cleared this time around in this session? Because if we don't get it cleared in 2021, we don't get a shot at it until 2023. That's correct. So, well, actually, that's technically it's not correct. The governor could do it anytime he wanted to.
Well, that's true. Yeah. Right.
But this is we only have a chance once every 2 years to push the governor to do that in an official way like this. And there are a number of conservatives who are on board with it. So last time they voted in unity against our amendments to expand it, to accept the expansion, to accept it in narrowly defined categories like to allow women to stay on it after childbirth for a year, things like that. But now there's a number of conservatives who are joining us in the fiscal argument. So while it's just plain the right thing to do, there's a fiscal argument to be made that you're making very effectively. And
well, it would seem like rural senators and rural representatives would really want it given to what's happening in those rural hospitals right now.
Well, what's happening in rural hospitals is they're closing at an alarming rate. And so folks who live in rural Texas, their distance to care is increasing in a lot of areas, because when your rural hospital closes, instead of a 20-minute drive you had now, maybe it's a 40-minute drive or a 50-minute drive just to get to a hospital. So I'm very hopeful that all of that, how it's been going, puts pressure on conservatives to join with us and make it happen.
I like the way you operate in the House. I find that you follow some of the principles that many of us have been talking about, and that is working with everybody, not finding a way to absolutely work with everybody. And I find that in a state representative or in any politician, it proves that you care more about the people than some sort of ideology that you represent.
I do, and thank you so much for recognizing that. I think my colleagues in the House also see that. So I will say, I'd like to say that in the Texas government, we are less adversarial across the aisle than what we see in Washington. So we do consider ourselves colleagues, but just the same. There are plenty of people who are more left of center that don't want to work with the people who are more right of center. And to me, the truth of the matter is there are some wedge issues, out at the edges. There are some wedge issues that divide us that probably we'll never agree on. But the vast majority of stuff that goes through the House gets large bipartisan support. And something like 86% of the bills in the last session had more than 100 votes out of 150 in the House. There's only 80 something Republicans, so you've got good support with more than 100 votes. That's enough to get a constitutional amendment, stuff like that. And so I like to think we have more in common than what separates us.
Well, again, if we elect more people like you, Jon, we'll be in great shape. Now, tell me a little bit about. Give me a walk down on the bills that you want to see in effect, and give me a walk down of the bills that you want to see canned.
I'm going to start with the voter suppression laws. So we've got House Bill 6 and Senate Bill 7, I believe they are, and they are moving through committees right now. These, we need everyone to show up in support of these. So I believe that you can register remotely to say you are for or against a bill. We call that dropping a card. So you can register remotely by going to house.texas.gov. And I think on the committees tab, you can find, for us, it'll be the elections committee, of course, and you can drop a card.
So we don't want SB 7, right?
SB 7 has already passed out of committee and it's going to go to the Senate House floor. We don't want SB 7 and we don't want HB 6. They're basically the same bill.
Right.
The SB is the Senate bill and the HB is the
House bill. Yeah.
They have companions so they can work together. And they do that to try to get across the finish line earlier in the session. And Republicans have the votes to advance both of these. It's pretty egregious. If you follow my Twitter and Facebook feeds, I comment about this quite a bit. But we want folks to register against these bills. So do what we call drop a card, register against the bill. Just make sure your voice is heard in some way. If you can come to Austin to testify against, that is also encouraged. The more voices they hear, the better. And when we pack a committee hearing, and they will have limited registration on the day of, probably. You just go to the Capitol, they got kiosks, you sign up to testify. When we sit in these committees and a bill comes up and we see, oh my goodness, there's 300 people here to testify on, for, or against, it really has an effect on legislators. I think the process is designed for you, the public, for people in the public to interface, to engage with their elected representatives.
Now, what's the major hurdle or the major bad thing in that HB 6 SB 7?
There's a bunch, and I don't know them all, but it limits.
Just give me the two major ones.
It makes it harder for handicapped people to vote. You have to prove that you require an accommodation, so you need a doctor's note. It will limit early voting. It will require that every voting location has the same number of machines. So whether you're in a church in rural Texas or you're at NRG Stadium to serve downtown Houston, you have to have exactly the same number of machines.
Makes no sense, right?
It makes no sense.
It hurts urban areas.
It hurts urban areas the worst. and there's other stuff. I mean,
we don't have the water bill in there though, nor do we have the you can't feed anybody in the line bill in there, right?
No, I don't think so.
Yeah.
We're not quite as egregious as Georgia, but it's
but
bad.
I heard that they were actually going against something that I practice here, which is going against the voter registrars.
Yeah, so I think they want to limit or remove the deputy voter registrars.
Right.
They want to severely curtail a government entity's ability to inform the public how to request a mail-in ballot. So our elections administrator or our county clerk couldn't even put out informational materials about that. I mean, it's egregious.
Yeah, we need to give that more coverage. I'm glad that you put that all on your Twitter feed all of the time. So we'll keep abreast of that other bill that we don't want.
Oh, that's the big one for me. There are other ones moving through, but my ability to focus on how many of these, there's
so many.
There's so many. There's an anti-transgender bill that won't allow transgender athletes.
Oh, we have one also. I didn't quite know that one. I didn't see that in your list. Okay.
Yeah, it's not on. I mean, it's something I actively fight against. I mean, I'm an ally, of course, the LGBTQIA community, and I'm bringing legislation that's for anti-discrimination legislation. I have a gender marker bill for trans folks to be able to change the gender marker on their driver's license, stuff like that. But that's also egregious, and I view it as a distraction on some of these other fronts. They're going to want to water down the George Floyd Act, which is being heard right now. Sanfronia Thompson brought House Bill 88, and that's the George Floyd Act. There's also a continuation of Sandra Bland Act, and I think it's Garnet Coleman's bill, but I'm not sure. I'm signed on to a bunch of these, and there's a bunch of criminal justice reform stuff that I support. And then public education, I've got some personal pet things I want to talk about really quick.
Give it to me.
One is House Bill 699. We're calling it Riley's Rule. We had a young man who had been fighting a chronic illness come into the office. He was like 15 when he booked an appointment to see me in my district office. And he had been held back a year in school because having too many absences. In our school district, we have a 90-20 rule and a 90-10 rule. If you don't attend 90% of the class meetings, you cannot pass the class, even if you do all the work. And so between the doctor appointments, specialty, appointments, therapy, things like that, he had missed more than 10% of the school meetings and was held back a year in school, even though he had completed the academic requirements. So this bill makes a state law that absences associated with chronic or terminal illness cannot be used to
Excellent.
And that passed unanimously through the House Education Committee. The young man, Riley, came and testified. I had members of the committee coming up to me afterwards and saying, you need to bring that young man to all your bill layouts. You go explain a bill.
You'll win it every time.
People get all your stuff passed. He was so powerful. It was great. And then I also have one that's House Bill 626, and this expands an adult career education program. So this is the most successful adult career education program in the country. It's called Texas Innovative ACE for Adult Career Education Program. And it is geared toward helping people train up for careers that are in demand, better paying jobs. And so my legislation doubles the grant for the program. So I've got a budget request to double their money and then expand the program so that they can also serve nonprofits that help veterans with career education. So double the size of the program and allow it to serve veterans. And it's near and dear to me because it helps an adult career education program, helps people, where they are to qualify for better jobs. And it's an original idea. It wasn't brought up to me by someone else.
But you know what is also great about that, Representative? The great thing about that is that this is where we are in the American economy. where that is a necessity in this new economy. Because look at what has happened with the freeze or with the pandemic. There are a lot of jobs that are no longer going to be there because now people are going to be working from home. They're going to realize new efficiencies, and people are going to have to retrain themselves for other things.
Absolutely right. And then this also feeds into we have an affordable housing crisis. If you're making minimum wage, you just cannot afford a place to stay. I mean, I can talk all day about those numbers. I've studied that a lot. So we're trying to redefine what affordable housing is, to move that needle for the developments that get the government subsidy. They get a break on their taxes if they agree to use a portion of their development for affordable housing. And I want that. You know, we've got initiatives in that area. Of course, if we would just raise the minimum wage, you know, that moves the needle on affordable housing right there. You know, part of the problem is we got people working for sub-poverty wages.
What are the pet peeve?
Pet peeve for me?
No, I mean, is there another bill that you have, or?
Okay, so I have a slate of 7 bills. So you mentioned me being a mechanical engineer. I am the only mechanical engineer in the entire Texas State Legislature. I'm the only oil and gas technical professional. I've worked in that industry for more than 25 years. And while I've done upstream exploration development, subsea production systems is what I've worked on. I'm a systems guy. I'm a math person, like literally build mathematical models.
Well, hell, your dad was a math PhD at the University of Austin.
That's right. My daddy was an endowed position
at the university, at our university. Both of us went to
the University of Texas at Austin.
Yes.
So I fortunately or unfortunately, whether it's a blessing or a curse, I grew up in a house with a math professor. But what I'm getting at here is I'm actually an expert in an engineering field called flow assurance. And this is the science of moving oil and gas product through pipes when they get hot or cold. I know what happened during this freeze, and a portion of that has to do with the availability of product that we use for thermal generation. So I brought 7 bills. We're calling it Step Up. I don't remember the bill numbers, but it's the Securing Texas Energy Power Utility Commission or something like that.
In other words, your bills are going to make sure that what happened in the big freeze does not happen again.
So I'm taking a very pragmatic approach to this, and I'm not listening to partisans, and I'm not listening to industry finger pointers, because what they did was they pointed fingers at each other.
Right.
Electrical generation folks said, if we had the natural gas, we would never shut down. And the natural gas people said, if you hadn't turned off electricity, we could have run our compressors and fed you the gas. And we need compressors to run gas through pipes. And I'm saying, just like when you have kids who are fighting with each other, I don't care which one of you started it. The problem is you depend on each other. And if either one goes down, our whole grid goes down. And I do not want to freeze my butt off in my house again. So I've brought these bills. There's a number of high priority bills that are being run by leadership folks that are high up in seniority in the House. And so by bringing my legislation, it doesn't mean that my particular bills will pass, but I'll be working with the authors of some of these other bills to kind of get stuff in there to make sure it's not just window dressing, to make sure it's not just lip service or to be able to say we did something without actually causing the change. If we don't change something, that will happen again. And that's just all there is to it, right? We got to change something.
Let me tell you something. Like I said, engineers get things done. And you've been getting a hell of a lot done. And we got to close here. But before we close, I always ask, what would you have liked me to ask you that I didn't?
So the question I used to hate that now I love to answer is, why did you get into politics? Why leave engineering? Why leave a good paying job to basically volunteer as a legislator? You know, we make $7,200 per year in this job. And the reason to do that is such an honor. It's such a privilege to be able to do things to help people in their daily lives. And your state government has the opportunity to make it worse or make it better. And I have gone to bring the voice of reason and work for the people of Texas as long as I can afford to. You know, I lived in Illinois for a while, and farmers used to say, if I ever win the lottery, I'm going to buy a farm and work it till the money runs out. Well,
You're going to work.
I'm going to do this until either I go broke or find a way to pay the bills.
I love you, brother. Listen, Texas House Representative Jon Rosenthal of District 135, friend of mine, a hell of a politician, but you know, first, someone who cares about his district, somebody who cares about his state, somebody who cares about his country. Thank you so kindly for having been on Politics Done Right, Jon.
Thank you so much, my brother. I appreciate you.
Again, please remember to keep your community radio station, KPFT, in your minds. Talk about it. Talk about it. Tell your friends to tune into this great station that you own, 90.1 FM Houston, or listen to it at kpft.org. Remember, folks, this is your station. This is a station that brings you what you want. Keep us on air by donating what you can afford at our website, kpft.org. Once again, don't forget you can get Politics Done Right Mondays through Fridays on Facebook Live at facebook.com/politicsdoneright, facebook.com/politicsdoneright, or on YouTube Live at politicsdoneright.com/YouTube. That is politicsdoneright.com/YouTube. And remember, you want some updates? Follow me on Twitter at Egberto Willies is my handle, at EGBERTOWILLIES. Folks, I hope you enjoyed this program. We make sure to give you something fresh every week. So please, please be here again and again and again, and tell folks about this great station that you know is there for us all. My name is Egberto Willies. This is Politics Done Right, and you know how I end this baby. I am what? Out! Welcome to Politics Done Right. I am your host, Egberto Willies. This is a progressive program that will take the mystery out of politics. This is the program that will encourage you to make sure government becomes we the people. Whether you are liberal, progressive, conservative, or otherwise, you get to air your point of view. We are an independent media outlet that, unlike mainstream media beholden to corporations, we only owe allegiance to you. Remember, you can also send me a tweet at EGBERTOWILLIES. That is at Egberto Willies. Let us engage. It is Politics Done Right.